I'm a 29-year-old man, and my wife, who is 27, is 8 months pregnant with our first child. This morning, I experienced something very unsettling that I feel I need to share for perspective. We live next to a married couple in their late 30s. I've always felt uneasy about the husband. He has a way of being overly friendly and intrusive, and I've found him to be too attached for comfort. I'm not sure if my feelings about him are clouding my judgment, but what happened today has definitely shaken my trust in my wife. This morning, I left for work, but wasn't feeling quite right. I decided to call off and surprise my wife instead. I stopped for breakfast, which took about 40 minutes, and when I got home, I entered through the back door. That's when I walked in on a scene that left me speechless. In our living room, I saw my wife sitting on the couch facing our neighbor, who was applying lotion to her pregnant belly. My wife had her top pulled up, exposing her belly. They both froze when I walked in, and my wife quickly asked why I was back. She then explained that our neighbor had come over to borrow my toolbox and that he wanted to feel the baby kick. In that moment, I was taken aback. I couldn't believe that my wife, who typically wouldn't let anyone she wasn't close with touch her, was allowing this man to rub lotion on her stomach. It felt inappropriate, especially since he was sitting relaxed on our couch while engaged in a private conversation with her. I asked him to leave, and he complied immediately. After he left, I tried to stay calm and understand what had happened. My wife insisted that the neighbor's wife is infertile, which I found surprising since he often talks about personal troubles. According to my wife, he just wanted to feel the baby move. But I couldn't shake the feeling that there was a significant difference between a brief touch and what had just occurred in our home. When I mentioned that I was considering talking to his wife about it, my wife insisted that I shouldn't, arguing it would only escalate the situation. However, I felt like there was more to it. Even if nothing inappropriate was happening, I wasn't comfortable with a man touching my wife and unborn child in our home, especially without me present. I struggled with how to express my concerns to her without adding unnecessary stress during her pregnancy. I didn't want to create conflict, but my mind was racing with doubts and unease about the entire situation. After reading the reactions I received online and talking to friends, I realized I needed to address this issue. My wife continued to stick to her story, apologized for making me uneasy, and promised it wouldn't happen again. Then, to complicate matters further, the neighbor left a handwritten note in our mailbox apologizing for the incident, but it didn't ease my discomfort. I felt the need to get more clarity on the situation, so I decided to contact the neighbor's wife, whom I'll refer to as Sally. I planned my approach carefully. I watched as my neighbor left for work, then called my mother-in-law to take my wife out for a girls' lunch, giving me a window to speak with Sally. Once I knew my wife was out of the house, I went to knock on Sally's door. When I spoke to her, I learned that my neighbor had told her I'd kicked him out and had caused a scene about not wanting them to speak to us anymore. Sally revealed that she and the neighbor had been visiting our home while I was away, helping my wife with household tasks she could no longer manage on her own due to her pregnancy. She showed me the messages where my wife had invited them over and had reassured them that I was okay with it, which was puzzling since I had no idea about any of this. It turned out that both my neighbor and his wife had been coming over under the guise of helping my wife while I was preoccupied. This revelation raised more questions for me about my wife's transparency and the dynamics at play. The situation has left me feeling even more unsettled, as I now grapple with feelings of betrayal and confusion regarding my wife's actions and the nature of her relationship with our neighbor. I want to approach this delicately to avoid causing any harm to her or our baby, but I can't ignore the trust issues that have arisen. I'm still in a place of seeking clarity and understanding before making any decisions about how to move forward. She was still welcome to come over, and my wife hadn't replied since I didn't often see Sally or chat with them. She just assumed her husband was being honest with her. However, she acknowledged that she had noticed the jerk and my wife becoming close friends. She thought this was likely due to the pregnancy, assuming it was his way of coping with their own struggle to have children, so she dismissed any concerns. I decided to confide in her about what I had stumbled into regarding my wife's relationship with her husband. I also mentioned the tools I had discovered, which turned out to be a load of nonsense. We reached the same conclusion about the situation. Both of us cried and hugged for the first time, taking turns denying, accepting, and calming each other down. We decided to take a walk around the neighborhood and made plans together. During our conversation, she suggested calling my wife at work to say that she had confessed to her about their affair and see how she reacted. After returning to my friend's place, I started experiencing major panic attacks, fearing I had messed everything up and worried that I was about to destroy my marriage. I was terrified I might be wrong about the situation. Later, I received a call from my wife, yelling at me to leave work and come home immediately. When I arrived home, I confronted her with what Sally had told me. She claimed I was crazy and a piece of garbage, saying she was thinking about leaving me. I was having a panic attack, feeling as if I had just ruined my life over nothing, while also trying to calm her down for the sake of our baby. In a moment of impulse, I told her that if she was leaving, I would still request a DNA test. That's when everything changed. Her entire demeanor shifted. She began pleading and begging, hyperventilating, and holding me tightly while asking how I had found out. She denied that anything had occurred. I reassured her that everything would be okay and suggested we go for a drive to talk. She agreed, and we went to a parking lot to have a more private conversation. During our discussion, I emphasized that if there was any chance something had happened, she needed to be honest with me because I already knew a lot. She eventually admitted that she had slept with someone a few times before getting pregnant, and that our baby might not be mine. She mentioned that he had been visiting occasionally, doing parental duties in case the baby was his, but they hadn't been together for months. She suggested we could move away together and insisted that the baby was ours no matter what. She claimed he had manipulated her into the situation and admitted lying to Sally to justify coming over for parental duties. I asked if she would consider staying with her mother for a few days while I processed everything. She agreed, so I took her home, packed some of her things, and dropped her off. I took my essentials and decided to stay in a friend's basement for the time being. A friend of mine called her on my behalf and informed her that if the baby was mine, I would take responsibility, but if not, it was her responsibility. Either way, I planned to file for divorce. My friends took my phone and deleted my social media accounts to help me cope. During this time, my wife had been calling my friends, but they told her to leave me alone. I spoke with my boss, who was very understanding of my situation. The last update I received from Sally was that her husband hadn't been home and had stopped replying to her calls and texts. In under a week, my entire life crumbled around me. The only thing that gave me hope was a small chance that the baby could be mine. Other than that, I felt like I had nothing left. I woke up one morning feeling upset that I woke up at all. I had never felt so alone, and I still hadn't wrapped my head around any of it. For the first time in my life, I found myself praying to stop feeling this way and hoping to find some strength. As an update, I'm not sure if anyone remembers my original posts as they were deleted, and I still haven't been told why, even after reaching out to the mod team. I'm not sure if this will get removed either. Many have been messaging me for updates, so here's the final one. To summarize the situation, about a week after my last update, my soon-to-be ex-wife gave birth to our baby. After my last update, the first few weeks in the hospital were incredibly challenging. I found myself navigating chaos, not only from my own emotions, but also from the pressures of family and friends. Fortunately, I've been blessed with an overwhelming amount of support, not just from those I know personally, but also from a wider community that has rallied around me. Once my wife was released from the hospital, we decided to sit down together to have a serious conversation. We met at a friend's basement, with my friend upstairs ready to provide moral support if needed. During our discussion, I expressed a lot of pent-up feelings, and while I ended up saying some harsh things, many of which I regret, there were also points I felt were necessary to make. Throughout our conversation, my wife apologized repeatedly and pleaded with me to reconsider our relationship and give our family another chance to overcome the challenges we faced. After about an hour of this emotional exchange, it became clear to me that we had reached a point where there was nothing more to discuss. I realized I no longer had any romantic feelings for her. She recognized that we need to focus on our daughter and prioritize her well-being above all else. We agreed to work on a custody arrangement in an amicable manner and expressed our commitment to eventually co-parent more actively together once the emotional wounds have healed. Ultimately, though, our marriage is over. I believe my wife has the potential to be an amazing mother, but she has let me down as a partner. My primary focus now is on getting myself mentally prepared to be the best father I can be. We have plans to eventually sell our house, but for the time being, I will be staying in an apartment. As for Sally, she is leaving her partner, who is apparently living with his mother. He continues to refuse direct communication with her. According to Sally, the last message she received from him expressed his understanding of the hurt he caused, his remorse, his love for her, and his willingness not to contest the divorce. Sally is having a tough time managing everything on her own and lacks a strong support system. In light of this, we are developing a friendship, helping each other through our mutual pain. I am doing my best to support her, but I want to be clear that I don't plan to pursue anything beyond a platonic friendship with her. Although she is a lovely woman, I am not interested in a romantic relationship. I am still adjusting to my new role as a parent and have come to terms with the fact that mentally, I have prepared myself for the possibility that my child might not be mine if things went south. Moving forward, I plan to take parenting classes and dedicate more time to bonding with my daughter. I am filled with a mix of fear and happiness about this new chapter in my life. While I recognize there is much work ahead and a lot of emotional healing still to come, I feel stable in my role as a father, and that is what matters most to me right now.